Hi everyone, my name is Miqdad. I'm from CareerDC. Today in our session, we will be talking about a profession, which is software testing. And we are very thankful for our guest, Sameer Youssef here. He is highly experienced in software testing. Sameer has worked for many companies such as Vodafone, ANZ, TVNZ, so he's quite experienced with software testing. I think, Samir, this is very helpful that you're going to help us by sharing some tips regarding your experience with software testing with young people. Because we work with young people, students that are looking for internships, that are looking to get into their industries. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I grew up, you could say, fairly good at school, academically wise, and entered to do engineering as a degree, and completed my engineering degree. And was really looking for jobs, and it seems that there are a lot more IT jobs at the time. So I entered into IT, and that suited me well. I had done a lot of computer work throughout my school years, so that suited me. And now I'm married with a couple of boys, and just paying the bills.
And Samir, how did you get into software testing? So we get this question from students that are still studying at the university. So can you tell us, so you just applied online, or did you decide to become a software tester, or was it more organic?
I guess you'd say it's more organic. This is back in 2005 when I was looking for a job, and it so happened that at that time, IBM and Vodafone had a partnership to do a major billing system upgrade for their telecommunication billing system. And the market, they really absorbed all people who had skills in the market. So being a new graduate who didn't really have much experience, that really gave me let me put my foot in the door. And I just actually, through a community acquaintance, he was able to refer me to that project.
Samir, we also get the question about the tools. So if someone wants to get into software testing and they don't have any experience, they are still studying, what kind of tools, softwares they need to learn? Which ones do you recommend?
I probably wouldn't start with tools. I'd say something that's important in software testing is the scientific approach, which is you have a theory and you test that theory. And I think a lot of students will be familiar with that, having done science courses at school, putting a hypothesis, for example, and proving it true or false. So this is very similar to software testing. You're given a piece of software, the developer will claim that it will perform such and such a function, and your job is to prove his assumption correct or incorrect. Now, as you mentioned, you can use tools to do that, but a lot of the time, tools aren't required. It's really just having a methodical way of approaching the problem. If someone was to give you, for example, a car to drive, you would check that the car can turn on, it can go forward, backwards, etc. But then at some point, the number of scenarios that you would need to test would become quite big, testing every single little function. So you need to be able to document and perhaps create matrices to test different combinations or permutations of settings in the car, etc. So a lot of it is just that mental ability to comprehend all those different scenarios. And then after that, you may want to look at using tools to execute more efficiently. And there's many different, you could learn a programming language, for example, Java or JavaScript. It's really endless, the amount of tools you could use.
So would you say, so using the scientific approach to write scenarios or a test case, and that test case, then you follow these steps and check that the system is working properly. And if it's not, you would log an issue or a defect, a bug in the system.
Correct. And given you mentioned those terms, there is a lot of terminology within the software testing industry. And if you did want to learn kind of from the formal terms, terminology, etc., there are very basic qualifications that you can take. For example, the Institute of Software Testing, I think it's called ISEB. You can do a foundation level software testing certificate that will teach you a lot of these basics of testing and fundamentals. That will also be helpful.
Okay. And how about automated testing? So generally, do you do mostly manual testing where you would write the test cases yourself and implement to go through the steps, or do you automate testing?
Sure. Certainly in the last few years, with the advent of DevOps and continuous integration and deployment, there's been a large push toward automated testing. And to answer the question, the short answer would be yes. Every company now wants to try and automate their testing process. But the longer answer would be that it's not always economic or feasible to do so, particularly with user interfaces where you really need the human eye to go and check whether things look aligned correctly. But even that area, there are automated tools where you can do screenshot comparison testing, etc. So it really depends project to project. Just to give some examples from my experience, when we were testing the billing systems, we had to test that the invoices were correctly printed or generated. So those were XML formatted files. So we had some checks that you could run on XML files to make sure that the summation of all the items on the invoice match the total. That's one type of testing. Another type of testing would be website testing through a browser. That's become very commonplace now, using tools like Selenium or Cypress or Playwright. And in my space at the moment, which is in mobile testing, there's also many different frameworks, but the native frameworks for Android, it's called Espresso, and for iOS, it's called XCUI test. So there's really, depending on whatever project you're working on, you would look for that particular, those particular software automation testing software tools.
Okay, great. And what's your advice for young people that want to get into software testing?
I think it's always important. Well, it's important though to keep in mind is the barrier to entry for software testing is quite low in comparison to other roles, for example, development. Like I mentioned, the main skill is having that methodical mindset. And I think once you have that, then it's just a matter of making your CV stand out more than the other candidates. And one way that you can do that, in my personal opinion, is to create a portfolio online to showcase your abilities. You may have a degree from university, or maybe not. You may have achieved the software testing qualification, but then what else can you do on top of that? And you can actually volunteer online to help test software online as a volunteer. If you were to visit GitHub, for example, there's plenty of different projects that are there. You could raise bugs for open source projects. And in the automation space, nowadays it's very easy to create a public GitHub repo where you can actually commit your code, make it visible online, and you can add a link to your public code repository on your CV. Also, you can actually, if you, for example, we're doing some testing of something, of any piece of software, even could be testing something which you have no contact with the developer, you just wanted to review some software and point out some bugs, you could actually put a video on YouTube or LinkedIn, and that would also improve your profile. So just proving to people that you have the knowledge and the ability to, query and diagnose software and raise the relevant bugs.
Samir, I really like the idea of the ability to go to GitHub and find projects to collaborate on, because this gives the students real work experience that they can actually put it on their portfolio and they put it on their CV. So it will be easier for them to get job interviews.
Correct. Yeah, it's all about making your CV stand out from the others. And I've reviewed a lot of CVs and hired testers, and I always look for that type of thing that lets that CV stand out. And in the automation space, particularly proving or showing that you have written code, and I can very quickly open a GitHub repo and check if the code looks clean or is it messy, etc. It's a very quick way to,
because it's all open source.
It's all open to view.
Yeah.
You may not license it to be used by other people, but it's open to view.
Fantastic. These are really great tips, Samir. So we'll just go through them quickly. So you suggested, GitHub, trying to find projects that are open source to work on, to test on a voluntary basis so that the students will put this experience on their CV. You suggested certificates from ISTQB, I think. Yeah, to get a certificate in testing. And you mentioned, some good news for the students that the barriers are low to get into the industry of software testing. So this is good. I thank you very much for your time, Samir, for your valuable time and joining us today. This has been a short interview, but you managed to give us the most important information to young people to use to get into the industry.
Yeah, and if anyone is watching this, something that I didn't mention was also just the ability to network. So if you, in my case, for example, if I'm looking for a role, I would contact as many recruiters as possible, people like Muqdad, for example, and give them a call every couple of weeks and ask them how the market's going. But also, you can attend meetups and all those different types of networking events to really get your name out there, because often applying for jobs through Seek, for example, you're not differentiated. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, I think.
Correct, because you also mentioned that you found your first job through your community contacts.
That's right.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much for your time, Samir.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.